Hey everybody, it's Doc. Welcome to the channel. So I thought it would be only appropriate that for the first episode of our second season and the first motorcycle that we've ever done on Less Than Perfect Vehicles We Love, I'd do one of my bikes. And this isn't just any bike. This is a very rare, 1 year only, 1992 Yamaha WR200R. I imagine that 90% of the people watching this video have no clue what a 1992 WR200 is. And there's the other 10% that are ogling over what a beautiful piece of eye candy this bike is. And it's super rare. Yamaha only brought it into this country for 1 year. Actually, people in other parts of the world that might be watching this video may not be that impressed because this bike went to Europe, this bike went to Australia. I know that in Australia, they produced this bike pretty much unchanged almost into the late 90s, 1998, 1999. And the only difference was some blue plastic, and I think they might have been even street legal over there. So this bike can trace its lineage back to the Yamaha IT series. The whole purpose of developing this bike was to take on the KDX 200, and that was quite an ambitious benchmark to try to achieve. So what they did is they had their engineers take the YZ 125 frame, and they needed an engine that was reliable. And what they decided was to go with the DT200R engine, which can trace its lineage back to the IT200. The DT200R has a counterbalancer, which the engineers in the United States wanted to take out to make this basically more of a wild two-stroke that was, really responsive for off-road activities. And the Japanese home company basically saw what a cool bike this was going to be, and they decided that they wanted to keep it for the domestic market as well, so the counterbalancer stayed. Keeping the counterbalancer probably led to the demise of this bike as far as taking on the KDX 200. That, and there were a few other factors. But what we ended up with was an amazing trail bike. So the reason that this bike was not well received in the United States when it came in, and like I said, I'm amazed they killed it after a year. It didn't last for two, but the reason it didn't do well was because the engine performed too much like a four-stroke, which I don't see as a bad thing, but in racing, that's a bad thing. The other part that hurt the bike was it was a little bit heavier than the KDX. This came in at 228 pounds dry, about 250 pounds wet, and the KDX was a bit lighter. But the real nail in the coffin for the Yamaha was the fact that it was also $600 more than the KDX. So that really did it in, and the bike never came back for a second year, at least in the United States. As I mentioned before, the bike, when it came in, was late 1980s, early 1990s, sort of day glow, I don't know, pastels, teal and green kind of colors. It was something I never loved, and basically when I got the bike, it didn't have any stickers on it. All the plastic was broken, the seat cover was torn, the wheels were bent. Both wheels were bent, and the bike was not running, but the bike kicked over. Now the funny thing is, the engine wasn't broken. It was just, the bike was so debilitated by the bent wheels, and I don't know what happened to the bike, that they stopped riding it and it just sat. So the engine didn't run because of sitting. So what you can see here is, this is a pretty good example of what happens when you restore a bike in the early 2000s and what you can do. So being a 1 year only bike, there was not a lot of aftermarket products for this motorcycle, so I really had to be creative and find some people that were also creative with me to get this bike running. The first thing you'll notice is the black XL rims, and these were probably the most difficult thing to fix because these are proprietary rims. They don't fit anything else, and I was having a hard time finding used ones because there weren't many bikes to work with. So I did find a company that had XL blanks, and they were able to custom drill the XL rims for me. So that was a really nice thing, and that's what really got this bike project going. None of this was cheap as far as getting this bike going, and it was certainly a labor of love, and it certainly has turned out to be a great investment as far as love and time go, because I've spent a lot of time on this bike. I trail rode this bike up until 6 or 7 years ago, to the point where it just got to the point where I had built it, rebuilt it again, and we were getting to the point where we're going on to a fourth rebuild, as far as, you know, it probably needs steering bushings and bearings and the whole deal. And I just, you know, at that point at age 55, I really wasn't up for it. But we'll go over the bike itself and a lot of the cool stuff that I was able to find for it. So something that's of interest you might notice are these aluminum frame covers, which I found in Australia. And, you know, today that wouldn't be such a big deal because, you know, Australia is just a hop, skip, and a jump away now by UPS, and it's not unusual for people to get stuff from overseas now, where back then it was kind of a big deal. It was just kind of the beginning of the internet, and, you know, getting things converted into Australian dollars to buy it, and the whole deal was quite a challenge. And but we did it, and this is something that is protected the frame. I love it, and it's just always been something pretty cool. Now the suspension, which was also sacked out, there was no replacement suspension for it. Again, it didn't cross over with any of the YZs, and so my options were either to figure out a whole new front end for the bike, or I got a hold of Factory Connection, and they were super helpful, and they managed to basically completely rebuild the forks and the shock. They revalved everything. They set it up for my weight and my style of riding. So it was a wonderful thing, and I am certainly endeared to them ever since. I've had them do a number of my motorcycles since then, because I love the way they set up the suspension, and it's not actually, it's a very precise science. I'm amazed at the results I got, and I've been very happy with that. The teal seat had to go. I did not love the teal seat. Luckily, even after 8 years of this bike was not to be seen in the United States, I found that seat made a gripper seat for it, and it was in black, and I certainly like that a lot because mostly it's not teal. Almost all of the hardware off this bike I pulled off. And so if you see stainless, you know, it's stainless, but if you see other stuff, it's probably in yellow zinc, which I've got a friend who owns a plating business, so a lot of those bolts were redone and came back like new. Again, there was just nothing, you know, there were no kits. I couldn't just order another kit for parts for it, although you can see that some of the parts have now been replaced with more modern hardware. This is kind of an interesting dated sort of item for dirt bikes, and that's the spare spark plugs and spark plug wrench, because, you know, some of you youngsters may not remember this, but you could actually change your spark plugs on a bike without disassembling the whole thing and requiring a shop to do it practically, where, you know, field repairs were very easy, and, you know, the bike was very simple, and it was very, very cool. Up here we've got, you know, moose handguards. That's no big deal. And then the Achirby headlight. I never loved the headlight that came on the WR, and mine was broken, so it wasn't a hard choice to go with something else. And at the time, you know, again, you know, late 90s, early 2000s, you know, at the time, again, you know, this bike's super rare now. At that time, it didn't have a whole lot of value other than the money I was pumping into it. And I think it fits the bike well. It looks cool, and I do love cool period modifications. That certainly sets this bike aside. As you can see, all of the plastic looks fantastic, and that's because it's brand new. And this is not reproduction plastic, which someone is doing out there now. This was all stuff I scavenged over the years, and just recently I have replaced it. The graphics, I had to go to a place in Australia to have those done, but being modern times now, wasn't so hard. But taking a look at everything, again, just a beautiful bike. This is something that I've spent many hours riding. You can see pictures of me and Patty and Rachel. Rachel's 20 now, and you know, this is what we did. You know, we took these bikes to Kentucky a lot. We rode, we had a great time, and this has been a very reliable partner for me. I was sad to give it up. And actually, I had tried to retire it several times over the years, but I never found a bike that was quite as perfect for me as this bike. And so over the years, I had a Cannondale 440E, which, you know, if you guys probably remember what a nightmare those things were. Basically, great bikes on the trail, but they required 3 times as much work in the shop as they did to keep them on the trail. So it was not a great bike. Those ended up getting sold pretty quickly. I had a 2004 KTM 200WR, which was a great bike. I had an auto clutch in it, and I liked it, but it just never lived up to, again, what this bike could do. I also had a ATK 250LQ, which, great bike. Ended up selling both of those bikes to my brother, and they both ended up failing for him, not being great bikes. So I got out of them on time, and actually the only successful bike that I've replaced this with was actually in 2017. I bought a Sherco 125 6 days, which has virtually all the same characteristics that this bike does as far as riding, and it has become pretty much a perfect surrogate for this bike. And this bike has gotten to go to retirement and relax, and spends its time almost all the time in my office now, and sits on a stand, and I just ogle at it and enjoy its beauty. One of the other things that attracted me to this bike, and this may be a weird thing to be attracted, I love the fact that, you know, this is back in the era where, you know, you put your graphics on your gas tank and they just nearly immediately bubbled off. This bike came with the gas tank is separate from the shroud, which was unusual for the time, and it covered the whole area where the tank was. So you could actually put plastic, or you could put graphics on the bike, and they actually stayed, which I loved. And actually, I've only taken advantage of that probably in the last 5 years of its riding life. You can see I leave this on. This is Turkey Bay, which is Redbird, and that's one of our favorite places to ride. You've probably seen videos that I've done. So one story I can tell you about this bike is, you know, I mentioned before that I have built this bike several times, and it actually does not have the frame that's original to the bike, because I ended up breaking the frame in probably the dumbest way possible, which was, and I think I have video of it. I'll see if I can pull it up. Italian piece of shit. Should have bought a Yamaha. Nothing. Where Rob had again a very rare bike. It was a Cowjiva 200 WMX, I think it is, and we were out riding. We were about 3 miles, you know, into the trailhead, and his engine suddenly had kind of a fairly fatal event, at least as far as there was no trail fix for it. So we were going to push it out, and it was quite hilly, and I thought, well, maybe we could just take a tow strap, hook onto it, and pull it. And so what I did was I ended up hooking to the subframe under here with my strap, and I started pulling Rob, and he kind of surged ahead a little bit. The strap got caught in the wheel, and it sucked the suspension down and broke the rear subframe off. So that was the end of that frame. I very happily managed to find another frame. I kind of looked for a while for a street legal frame from Europe, but I couldn't get it to me, and I wasn't sure if all the parts would fit. So I ended up finding a stock frame. Again, it was in pretty bad condition. And then instead of painting, which we originally did, this frame's been powder coated, and it's held up very nicely. Thanks for watching the video, and I appreciate you guys coming and listening to my stories. I love this bike. It's been something that's been a big part of my life, and if you have a less than perfect vehicle that you love, feel free to contact me. If you're nearby, I'd love to do a video on it. I love great stories, and I love less than perfect cars. So on that note, you guys have a great day. We'll see you on the trail.
Funny when you watch the GoPro movies, the fucking camera has such good technology, like it looks like you're fucking riding on a gravel road. Yeah. Roger's still there. I'll go around this one. Whoa! That's a big one. It's okay. I think we should throw a few big rocks right in the middle of this fucking like that then. Yeah. Oh, you moved the log, you pussy. Rock. I feel like I'm driving the LJ. About 10 cc's an hour. It's the weight. Now the LJ's got a winch on it, we'll be able to fucking bring it up here.